Boy, I sure love apples. How about you? And I don't know about you, but when I'm eating my apple, I don't think too much about what's inside the apple or what it's made of, or even what happens to it once it gets inside my body. I'm just enjoying the apple while I eat it. But when you look real close at an apple, what it's really made of is a bunch of sugar. And when you look real close at a sugar molecule, it looks something like this. You see lots of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they're all bonded together. Well, there's a lot of energy stored in the bonds between the carbon and the hydrogen atoms. Those carbon and hydrogen atoms are sharing electrons, and those electrons have a lot of energy in them. And another name for this type of sugar is called glucose. I think everybody agrees that living things need some type of fuel to survive. And for humans and a lot of other animals, an apple would be some great fuel. But something else that creatures need in order to survive, at least most creatures, is oxygen. But if you ask most people why you need oxygen, they really don't know. Some people will say, well, you need oxygen to breathe. Or other people might say, you need oxygen for your blood cells. But the real reason we need oxygen is because it helps us release the energy that's in those chemical bonds of our food so that our cells can use that energy. You see, we don't need oxygen so that we can breathe. It's the opposite way around. We breathe so we can get the oxygen. And our blood, it's just a delivery system for the oxygen. So the blood carries our food to all the cells of our body. And then the food goes into those cells. And then once it's inside the cells, it goes to the cell part that's called the powerhouse of the cell. And that's the mitochondria. And it's inside the mitochondria where all the energy is extracted from our food molecules. And then that energy is converted into the fuel of the cell. And the fuel of the cell is called ATP. So I want to show you how this happens, and it's really not too confusing. Just pay close attention. So here's our sugar molecule from the apple and the oxygen that you breathe in. And if you look at the sugar molecule carefully, you see some really high energy electrons between the carbon and the hydrogen that are being shared. And there's so much energy in these electrons that when the electrons get transferred from the carbon and hydrogen bonds to the oxygen, enough energy is released to make ATP. So the ATP that your cells make comes directly from those high energy electrons that are in the sugar molecules of the food you eat. Now the hydrogen ions that are left behind on the sugar molecule are also transferred to the oxygen, and this makes water. And this is the water that you breathe out every time you exhale. So think about it. The water that you're exhaling right now is made from the oxygen that you're breathing in, the electrons from the food you eat, as well as the hydrogen from the food you eat. Cool, huh? Now we'll just keep track of the water molecules by putting them off to the side, but understand that really what happens to them is you exhale them. Notice that we still have a lot more carbon to hydrogen bonds left in our sugar molecule. So there's still a lot more energy in there that we can extract and use to make ATP. So let's watch this process again with another oxygen atom that you're breathing in. First, the electrons are transferred from the sugar to the oxygen, and then the hydrogens are transferred, making another water molecule. Now what we have left in the sugar molecule is 1 carbon and 2 oxygens that aren't bonded to anything except each other, and there's no more high energy electrons left in that area. So your mitochondria gets rid of that as CO2, and you exhale that out of your lungs. So the CO2 that comes out of your lungs is made up of atoms that were in your food just a couple seconds ago. There are still more carbon to hydrogen bonds left in that glucose molecule, so there's still a lot of energy left in it. So let's watch this process happen one more time and realize that each time electrons are transferred to oxygen, energy is being released, and that energy is being used to make ATP inside your mitochondria. And that ATP can be used to do all kinds of cell work. So you can see our glucose molecules getting broken down. We haven't completely broken it down, or what we call oxidized it, but I think you get the point, so we'll just stop right here. But understand that in your mitochondria, this process continues until the glucose molecule is completely broken down. And this entire process is called cellular respiration. This entire process, called cellular respiration, occurs in the mitochondria of your cells. In fact, it occurs in the mitochondria of all cells that have mitochondria. So understand that this means plant cells have mitochondria as well. So plant cells are also doing this process called cell respiration. Because think about it, plants make food, right? During photosynthesis? Well, what do you think they do with that food? They have to break down their food to make ATP, just like we do. ATP is the fuel of their cells, just like it's the fuel of our cells. So plants, just like us, need oxygen to break down their food. And when they do that, just like us, they give off CO2 and water. We represent this process of cell respiration by using something called a chemical equation, which is kind of like a recipe. So here's the equation for cell respiration. Sugar plus, or added to, oxygen makes, or sometimes we say yields, water plus carbon dioxide, and energy is given off in the process to make ATP. So now you know that we eat food so that we can use the energy in food to make ATP. And we need oxygen to accept those electrons from food. Without both of those things, we would die. And in the process, we give off carbon dioxide and water as waste. All cells that have mitochondria do this, so plants do it too. I sure hope you learned a lot about cell respiration. See ya! You're nothing but a big baby with big pants on.